Can you teach Daito-ryu and other classical martial arts to children? And if so, how? Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, and today we're answering a question that I received through Facebook. Is there a specific approach towards teaching kids in Daito-ryu? As I review the Hiden Mokuroku of my own Daito-ryu tradition, I'm thinking most of the techniques might be too severe for kids. Thank you for your question. Now, later on in our conversation, you mentioned more specifically that you're a practitioner with the Hakuhokai. I believe today there's a separate tradition named Hakuho-ryu. I think since 2001, 2002. The founder of the tradition was initially practicing under the Takumakai, I think under Hisa Sensei. I know that he's traveled to the Daitokan with some of the Takumakai members. Keeping in mind that at the time, from what I understand, the Takumakai members were pretty split, and we're talking in the 70s. Some members wanted to go and learn from the source, or at least from mainline. Others really wanted to focus on Hisa Sensei's teaching. Whether the Mr. Okabayashi, the founder of Hakuho-ryu, had a preference. Now, he's traveled to the Daitokan, but whether he had a technical preference or inclination towards one or the other, I do not know. And so while what you're practicing today might be similar in shape and form, the teachings might be very different. With that said, I think I can give you an answer that will be useful and valid in the abstract, for most classical martial arts, or at least Japanese classical martial arts. Is there a specific approach towards teaching kids in Daito-ryu? Well, the first question is, should you teach children classical martial arts like Daito-ryu? I think you can. Maybe not all practices are open to that. I wouldn't teach children, hinawaju and firearms and that kind of things. But I know I have friends that teach yai to their children. They're relatively young children, and I think there can be value to that. Obviously, they're not using live blades, but still, even if you're using just a yaito, you can do some damage with that. So there is danger. Now, I'm assuming that what you're trying to say really is, well, the techniques are dangerous, and so should you teach them to children since A, there's a risk of injury, and B, there's a risk of misuse. Now, and this is why I kind of gave the caveat / warning at the beginning. In mainline, most teachings are either exercises or kata teaching. The techniques are not really taught in isolation. And like any kata teaching, you could, by and large, you could remove the core technical element of the kata, and you could still learn things. You could still learn about distance management. You could still learn about having composure. Where to put your gaze. All the various general concepts that are important to your tradition, right? Or at least, I'm giving some that are important to Daito-ryu practice. So the technique itself is, you don't really have to teach it, right? You can teach a lot about just everything that surrounds it to start with. And beyond that, I always say that, classical martial arts like Daito-ryu are predominantly, it's a cultural environment in which you can grow. And the environment itself, the people that compose it, are going to be what you're going to be absorbing, right? You're learning through an apprenticeship, essentially. And so even if you're not learning the core element that basically makes everything else that's in support of it worth it, well, it's still things you're gonna need to learn, right? You can focus on the tip of the spear, but there's a whole spear attached to it, right? And the younger you can start to teach, chances are the stronger the pull of the spear is going to be, and the sturdier the assembly of the spear is going to be, and the more efficient the blade is going to be. And then you add the tip, and then you make sure that you have a piercing tip, and then you have a very, very potent spear, right? So I think you have to think about it in those terms, not in terms of, well, it's a dangerous technique, because otherwise, yes, I wouldn't. If that's how you want to think about it, I wouldn't teach many adults either. And the approach to the practice would have to be dramatically different. So, is there a specific approach to teaching kids in Daito-ryu? Start with the culture. Start with the things that they can do based on their age. If they're very, very young, the younger they are, the more they learn. Children learn by absorption. So make sure they are in the dojo environment. Make sure that they're in an environment where they can experience, feel, see, hear the year of the dojo, how people move, and so on. At a later age, make sure that they start to respect the customs of the tradition, right? How to enter and leave the dojo. How to bow properly at a proper angle. Don't lower your head. That kind of things. And then later on, you gradually kind of move toward the the kata and the technique, and then it's just making sure that they have the right distance, that they have ballpark the right movement, that the hands are ballpark in the right place, and then you just kind of keep polishing and sharpening until at some point they're going to reach teenage and close to adulthood, and eventually they'll start to transition to adult class. Maybe before that they're going to start to help in instruction in the children's class to be able to learn a little bit about that as well, develop notions of leadership. And then, later on, eventually they'll reach a point in their life where, they're going to be much older. Hopefully they're going to have strong foundation. And once you start to add the more, what I think you perceive as the riskier parts of the practice, then not only is it going to make a whole lot more sense, but hopefully all the practice and all those years of cultivation is going to have bred the right mindset and the right physical attributes that are going to be useful to decades and decades of practice to follow. I hope that answered your question. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to me. If there's any viewers that have also additional questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the comments down below. Thank you for your time, and until next time.